So here's a question that's been keeping me up at night. What happens when the weird stuff, the fringe stuff, the stuff that used to stay in basements and back corners of the internet? What happens when technology just hands it the microphone?
That's actually the perfect way to frame it. Because we're not talking about technology creating new problems from scratch. We're talking about technology removing the barriers that kept existing problems contained. And that distinction matters enormously.
Right, like conspiracy theories aren't new. Extremist movements aren't new. The desire to build something destructive in your garage isn't new. But the ability to actually do it, or to find 10,000 people who want to help you do it, that part's new.
Exactly. And the framework I keep coming back to is borrowed from biology. Think of society as having an immune system. Not a perfect one, no immune system is, but a functional one. Gatekeepers, institutions, geographic friction, the sheer cost of organizing. These all served as checks on how far and how fast dangerous ideas or capabilities could spread.
Okay, let's unpack that. Because when you say gatekeepers, people immediately think censorship. And that's not really what you mean, right?
Not at all. I mean something much more basic. Think about 1985. If you had a truly fringe political ideology, your options for spreading it were what? Photocopied pamphlets? Maybe a local access cable show at 2 in the morning? A post office box for your newsletter? The friction was enormous. Not because someone was actively stopping you, but because reaching people was expensive and slow.
Yeah, you had to really commit. Like, you weren't casually radicalizing people. You were mailing envelopes.
Right. And media gatekeeping. Editors, publishers, broadcast standards, these weren't perfect, and they had their own biases, absolutely. But they did serve a filtering function. Not every idea got amplified equally. There was a bottleneck, and that bottleneck, for all its flaws, kept the most extreme content from reaching mass audiences.
So you're saying the bottleneck was actually doing something useful, even though we didn't love everything about it.
Precisely. It's like your body's immune system sometimes attacks things it shouldn't. Allergies, autoimmune conditions. It's not perfect, but you wouldn't remove it. You'd die.
Okay, so what removed it? I mean, I think we all know the answer, but walk me through.
Social media. But not in the way people usually talk about it. The standard narrative is social media is bad or social media spreads misinformation. That's true, but incomplete. The deeper issue is that platforms were architected around engagement optimization. They needed people to stay on the platform, to click, to share, to feel something strongly enough to react. And it turns out that the content which generates the most engagement is often the most extreme, the most emotionally provocative, the most outrage-inducing content.
So the algorithm didn't have a political agenda. It had an engagement agenda. And it just so happened that the most engaging stuff was the craziest stuff.
That's exactly right. And this wasn't a conspiracy. It was an emergent property of optimization. You build a system that maximizes engagement, and it will inevitably discover that fear, anger, and tribal identity are incredibly engaging emotions. The algorithm found the exploit in human psychology and ran with it.
It's like if you built a robot to find the most efficient path through a maze, and it just knocked down the walls.
That's a great analogy. The system found the optimal solution. It just wasn't the solution we wanted. And the result was that ideas which would have stayed on the margins, not because they were suppressed, but because they couldn't gain traction through normal channels, suddenly had a direct pipeline to millions of people.
Okay, so now let's talk about the cancer thing. Because you mentioned the immune system earlier, and I think this analogy goes deeper than most people realize.
It does. So in biology, here's what most people don't fully appreciate. Your body produces cancerous or precancerous cells all the time. Mutations happen constantly. This is normal. The reason you don't have cancer right now is not that mutations aren't occurring. It's that your immune system identifies and eliminates those cells before they can proliferate.
Wait, seriously? Like, right now my body is making cancer cells and just dealing with it?
Essentially, yes. The immune system is constantly surveilling, identifying aberrant cells, and destroying them. Cancer, actual clinical cancer, occurs when that surveillance system fails. When mutated cells evade detection, or when the immune system is compromised, or when the mutation rate exceeds the system's capacity to respond.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Society's version of mutations. The fringe movements, the dangerous ideologies, the destructive impulses. They've always been there.
Always. Every society has produced them. The question was never whether these mutations would occur, it was whether the immune system could keep up. And what we're seeing now is that technology has both increased the mutation rate by connecting people and ideas that would never have found each other, and simultaneously degraded the immune system by eroding the institutions and friction that served as our defenses.
So it's a double hit. More threats and fewer defenses. That's not great.
It's not. And here's where it gets really concerning. Because so far we've been talking about information, ideas, movements, radicalization. But the same dynamic applies to physical capabilities. And that's where this conversation gets truly existential.
Right, because spreading a bad idea is one thing, but spreading the ability to actually do catastrophic damage, that's a different ballgame.
Completely different. Let's walk through the progression. Nuclear weapons required nation-state resources to develop. Billions of dollars, massive industrial infrastructure, thousands of scientists. The barrier to entry was extraordinarily high. And even so, proliferation has been one of the defining security challenges of the last 75 years.
And we've barely managed that. Like the fact that we've gotten this far without a nuclear exchange since 1945 is, there were some close calls.
Very close calls. Multiple instances where we were one decision, one person, away from catastrophe. But the point is that nuclear capability required a state-level investment. Now consider biotechnology. The cost of gene sequencing has dropped faster than Moore's law. CRISPR technology is accessible to undergraduate students. The information needed to engineer dangerous pathogens is increasingly available in the scientific literature.
So you're saying the barrier to entry for bioweapons is dropping toward, what, individual level?
It's approaching small group level, which is terrifying enough. You don't need a nation-state anymore. You potentially need a small team with graduate-level expertise and equipment that costs less than a luxury car. And the trend line is only going in one direction.
And then there's AI.
And then there's AI, which acts as a capability multiplier across all of these domains. AI can help with protein folding, with chemical synthesis pathways, with identifying vulnerabilities in systems. Capabilities that were once the exclusive domain of state intelligence agencies or elite research institutions are increasingly accessible through commercial AI systems.
It's like every technology that gets developed at the top eventually trickles down. That's usually a good thing. Medicine trickles down. Communication trickles down. But destructive capability also trickles down. And we don't have a way to trickle down just the good stuff.
That's the fundamental tension. And there's a concept that the security researcher Dan Geer articulated years ago that I think captures it perfectly. He talked about the inverse relationship between the power of technology and the number of people who can wield it destructively. As technology becomes more powerful and more accessible, the minimum size of a group capable of causing catastrophic harm shrinks.
So it goes from nation states to organizations to small groups to potentially individuals.
Exactly. And the astronomer Martin Rees, he's the Astronomer Royal in the UK, made a famous bet in 2003 that by 2020, bioterrorism or bioerror would cause 1 million casualties. He lost that bet, thankfully, but his underlying logic wasn't wrong. The trend lines he identified were correct. The capability diffusion is real.
He was just early.
He was early, and being early about existential risk is much better than being late. The entire existential risk community, people like Nick Bostrom, Toby Ord at Oxford, they've been mapping these risks for decades. And the common thread across all of them is this democratization of catastrophic capability. The tools are getting cheaper, more accessible, and more powerful, while our governance mechanisms remain stuck in the 20th century.
Okay, let's talk about something that I think makes this more concrete for people. Because we can talk about bioweapons and nuclear proliferation, and it feels abstract. But there's something happening right now that demonstrates this pattern in real time. The resurgence of nationalist and neo-fascist movements worldwide.
This is a perfect example because it illustrates the immune system failure in real time. These ideologies never disappeared. They were always present, in small groups, in certain communities, in the margins. What changed was their ability to organize, recruit, and mainstream themselves.
And I think what's wild is how they adapted. Like, the new far right doesn't look like the old far right. They've figured out memes, they figured out irony, they figured out how to use humor and aesthetics to make their ideas palatable to people who would have rejected the same ideas in their 1930s packaging.
That's the mutation adapting to evade the immune system, exactly like cancer. The old neo-Nazi movement was easy for society's immune system to identify and reject. Shaved heads, swastikas, explicit rhetoric. The social antibodies knew what to look for. But the new variants? They use ironic distance. They couch things in humor. They create elaborate coded languages. They've essentially developed camouflage that lets them pass through the same social filters that would have caught the earlier versions.
So the mutation got smarter, and the immune system didn't keep up.
And in many cases was actively weakened. The institutions that might have pushed back, media, education, political norms, were themselves under attack and losing credibility. When people don't trust the immune system, they don't support it, and it degrades further. It's a vicious cycle.
Which brings us to what I think is maybe the most frustrating part of all of this: the governance problem.
The no adults in the room problem, as some people call it. And it's not that there aren't smart people working on these issues. There are. It's that the pace of technological change has so dramatically outstripped the pace of institutional adaptation that we have a structural gap. Regulations are being drafted for the technology of 5 years ago. By the time they're implemented, the landscape has shifted entirely.
I think about this with AI. Like, Congress is still trying to figure out what TikTok is, and we're asking them to regulate systems that might be more consequential than nuclear weapons.
It's a fundamental mismatch. And it's not unique to any one country. This is a global problem. The institutions designed to manage global risks, the UN, international treaties, regulatory bodies, they were designed for a world where the primary threat actors were nation-states. They have no framework for a world where a small team in any country can potentially access catastrophic capabilities.
And you can't just say, well, let's make it illegal. Because the information is out there. The tools are dual use. The same CRISPR technology that might cure genetic diseases can also, in theory, be used to engineer a pathogen. You can't ban the knowledge.
You can't. And this is where the analogy to the immune system becomes not just descriptive, but prescriptive. You can't prevent all mutations. That's not how immune systems work. They work by detection, response, and adaptation, which means our approach to these risks can't be purely preventive. We need robust detection systems. We need rapid response capabilities. We need institutions that can adapt at something approaching the speed of the threats they face.
But we don't have any of that.
We have the beginnings. There are biosurveillance systems. There are AI safety organizations. There are people doing important work on these problems. but the scale of the response is nowhere near proportionate to the scale of the risk. It's like having a few white blood cells when you need an army.
So let me ask the question that I think everybody listening is wondering right now. What do we actually do? Like, as individuals, as people who are not running governments or AI labs? What's the move here?
I think the honest answer is that there's no simple move. And I want to resist the temptation to give a feel-good answer that papers over the severity of the problem. But there are things that matter.
Give me something. Because right now I feel like I need to go lie down.
Okay. First, awareness matters more than people think. Not passive awareness, not just knowing this is a problem and feeling anxious about it. Active awareness. Understanding the dynamics well enough to recognize them when they're happening. To see when an institution is being degraded. To notice when a technology is enabling something that wasn't possible before.
So basically, don't be the frog in boiling water.
Exactly. Second, support the institutions that serve as immune function, even imperfect ones. Journalism, scientific oversight, regulatory bodies, international cooperation mechanisms. These are all flawed. They're all frustrating. They're all slow. But they're what we have, and weakening them further accelerates the problem.
Even when they mess up. Because the alternative to an imperfect immune system is no immune system.
Right. Third, and this is the one I'm most passionate about, we need to build new institutional capacity. The existing immune system was designed for a different threat environment. We need new organizations, new frameworks, new norms that are designed for the world we're actually living in. The biosecurity community is doing some of this. The AI safety community is doing some of this. But it needs to happen at a much larger scale.
It's like we need an immune system upgrade. Not a replacement, but an upgrade.
That's exactly right. And finally, and I think this is important, we need to resist fatalism. The trends I've described are real and they're concerning, but they're not inevitable outcomes. Cancer is treatable. Immune systems can be strengthened. The fact that the challenge is enormous doesn't mean the outcome is predetermined.
I like that. It's not hopeless. It's just really, really hard.
It's really, really hard. And the stakes are higher than they've ever been. Which means giving up isn't an option. Not because optimism feels good, but because the alternative is unacceptable.
You know what gets me? This is the first time in human history where a small number of people, potentially even one person, could cause damage at a civilizational scale. That's never been true before. Even the worst actors in history needed armies.
And that's the fundamental shift. The asymmetry between the power to destroy and the power to protect has never been this skewed. Which means our collective response needs to be proportionate to that asymmetry. Not reactive, not incremental, proportionate.
Well, on that cheerful note, I think the takeaway here is eyes open. Support the good stuff, even when it's imperfect. Push for new solutions and don't give up. Because giving up is the one guaranteed way to lose.
Couldn't have said it better. And if nothing else, have these conversations. Talk about this with people. Because the immune system we're building isn't just institutional. It's cultural. It's the collective awareness and commitment of millions of people who understand what's at stake and refuse to look away.
That's a good place to land. Thanks for making me both smarter and more terrified in the span of 25 minutes.
My pleasure, I think. Thanks everyone for listening.
Until next time, try not to think about this too much before bed. I'm going to fail at that, but, do as I say, not as I do.